a cousin of the Queen, and 2 others as they holidayed in County Sligo in the Irish Republic. On the same day, they killed 18 British soldiers in a booby-trap explosion at Warren Point in County Down. Then IRA prisoners went on, first, the dirty protest, then hunger strike at the Maze prison near Belfast. They wanted political status. She said they were simply criminals.
But may I make one point about the hunger strike in the Maze prison? And I want this to be utterly clear. There can be no political justification for murder or any other crime. The government will never concede political status to the hunger strikers or to any others convicted of criminal offences in the province.
The whole system in Northern Ireland, both special arrest, special court system without jury, has proved to us beyond all doubt that these courts are set up. They convict men just to convince people that we are criminals, which we are not. We are a product of the political troubles in Northern Ireland at this moment.
While this hunger strike ended without concessions, it sharpened the focus on the need for stronger Anglo-Irish relations. These began with a summit in Dublin.
The hunger strike, the first hunger strike, was creating great tensions and pressures, and I think that is perhaps one of the reasons that she brought many of her senior ministers, Geoffrey Howe, Carrington, to Dublin Castle, and there was an agreement at least on an east-west institutional process, which has formed part of the architecture that remains to this day. And then there was a joint studies process, which was, if you like, de facto it was mainly in the economic sphere, more oriented to north-south economic cooperation.
A big party, or the big delegation on both sides. And the outcome of that was interesting insofar as the first time that this kind of east-west thing was put down on paper, and that east-west dimension was recognised, and it was pretty significant, thing in that respect, because heretofore that had not been the position.
IRA prisoners were to go on hunger strike again, however, in 1981 in a more uncompromising protest. It started with Bobby Sands, who was elected to the House of Commons in a by-election before he died. In all, 10 men would die before the hunger strike ended.
It was a shabby approach to a very sensitive issue at a very sensitive time. The way in which she dismissed everything Cardinal O'Fee said to her when he went to see her. The way in which she dismissed everything John Hume said when he, as an MP at the time, went to see her. And the way in which her public profile on the issue actually hardened attitudes within Northern Ireland at a time when what was needed was something which would soften attitudes on the ground and soften attitudes within the prison in such a way that it would end the awfulness of what ultimately happened.
We can, of course, maintain and improve an already humane prison regime. But there's no point in pretending that this is what the Provisional IRA want. They have remained inflexible and intransigent in the face of all that we have done, because what they want is special treatment, treatment different from that received by other prisoners. They want their violence justified. It isn't, and it will not be.
That was a purely political stunt. And if the British government had shown any weakness at all, it would have been very, very dangerous.
There can be no question of political status of someone who is serving a sentence for crime. Crime is crime is crime. It is not political, it is crime.
Margaret saw the hunger strikers not just as hunger strikers, but in a fundamental way challenging the very structure of the United Kingdom, to which she was so committed. And she wouldn't allow that structure to be undermined in this way because she believed, personally I think rightly, that had it been undermined in that way, then there would have been a seismic shift, and dealing with really determined people in the future would have been undermined because they had demonstrated that they could roll over a British government, and Margaret wasn't going to be rolled over.
Nobody goes on hunger strike to die. They go on hunger strike to create pressure towards a solution. I think that she was not ignorant. She was dismissive of the consequences of the hunger strike, and of course the hunger strike became a watershed in Republican development and indeed in the development of the peace process, the electoralism, and where we are today. So in a certain way, although in a very negative way, she affected that.
But in terms of the backdoor channels, if you like, why was there no kind of solution or meeting of minds there?
Well, there was clearly the makings of a resolution, and I don't know if it's Thatcher herself or her government, but I mean, put quite simply, and some of this has been documented, but put quite simply, she wanted a security solution. She wanted victory and defeat.
If you give concessions to people on the basis that they say they'll commit suicide unless you do, you go down that road, you've got no authority at all. Her view was that if they chose to commit suicide, she was powerless to stop them. As simple as that.
When the Pope wished to send someone to see them, to beg them to give up, we gave every facility. Oh no, it is the hunger strikers and those who are coercing them. It is they who have been inflexible and intransigent. It is they who have said, you will starve unto death.
Do you think that was her genuine belief that these guys could go and kill themselves no matter what?
That's a really interesting question, and now, because my first answer for some time would have been yes, that is the case. Now, of course, it's become clear that there was more toing and froing between the British government, more offers going on, even particularly after the first 4 hunger strikers died. In the end, of course, she proves to be flexible over prison clothing, one of the main issues. And therefore, it would lead you to believe that somewhere, somehow in the British state, somebody persuaded her that this actually was a serious problem and it was desirable to bring it to an end as quickly as possible. And in the end, after all, a significant package of concessions was actually made. In the end, the way the prison regime evolved for Republican prisoners was pretty much along the lines of what they were looking for when they began the hunger strikes. And you cannot avoid the fact that decisions made by Margaret Thatcher are part of that.
The prisoners were at the core of this. What was acceptable to the prisoners is what counted. What we were there to do on the outside was represent the prisoners and articulate their case. But there was contact also directly with the prisoners. You have to remember that. So it was their decision. I think clearly there was the possibility of a solution. I think clearly that the British government decided not to go for that solution. And therefore 10 people died, and it did come to a critical point, as most people know, after the first 4 hunger strikers died.
The question is, did she know what she was doing?
Well, I think hindsight is an excellent thing. The truth is the hunger strikes, for example, had a deep emotional impact on the nationalist population, and they led to the election of Bobby Sands, and certainly for at least 2 to 3 years a major upsurge in the Sinn Féin vote, and to a polarisation within the communities here. All those things we all now know as the very serious consequences of the hunger strikes. Was she fully aware of them? Did she expect the Catholic community to rally in that way? Did she expect that the SDLP wouldn't stand in Fermanagh and South Tyrone at a crucial moment? I suspect not, because there were senior officials in the Northern Ireland office who were caught on the hop by what happened. So why, if they were caught in the hop, should she not be caught in the hop?
She got no victory. what you got was 10 people who died, 10 people who inspired many other people.
I think with hindsight, what she did was led to the growth of the IRA. They say that Ian Paisley was the biggest recruiting sergeant that the IRA ever had, and I think Margaret Thatcher could be thought along the same lines.
Did she, do you think, help Sinn Féin and the IRA, the provisional movement, into politics?
Of course. I mean, that was essentially what the hunger strike was about, not by those young men who died, not by the vast majority of people within the Republican movement, but certainly by some of the Machiavellian people who were leading that organisation. And that objective was played into their hands by Margaret Thatcher.
In the Irish Republic, hunger strikers stood in the general election of 1981. They won 2 seats.
I believe there is always in the Irish public mind, a wish for a solution of this problem, a wish for ultimate Irish unity. I believe that's as present today as it ever was, and I would perhaps suggest that at the present time, because of the particular tragedies of Northern Ireland, the violence and the bloodshed, and all the terrible, all the deaths and all the terrible things that are happening, that perhaps the wish for Irish unity and for solution of the Northern problem that's always there is probably more intense now than it would be at another time.
He found it very, very frustrating. This was, if you like, a major crisis where opinion, if you like, expected the Irish government to be able to do something to solve the situation. She was adopting a very hardline attitude. He was facing an election. Obviously, he didn't want the achievements of the Dublin Castle Summit to come crashing down, so he was on a diplomatic tightrope. But now, if you remember, 2 hunger strike candidates got elected in the June 1981 general election, and I think he would have held the very hardline attitude of the British government as partly responsible for him finding himself out of office.
In retrospect, he felt that if she had been somewhat more giving on that issue, on the issue of the prisoners, he seemed to imply to me anyway, that he had, a resolution of that which would have saved a lot of pain and anguish. The detail of that I don't know, but that was always a sense I had talking with him, that was something that really irritated him about her ungiving attitude, if you like, an unyielding attitude on that matter.